Hello, friends. Chris McMillan here with truthconduit.com. I'm here with Richard Gage of Architects and Engineers for 9/11. This is a group of certified professionals, architects and engineers, who are trying to reopen the 9/11 investigation because the science behind the official explanation doesn't add up. Richard, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today. How are you doing?
It's an honor, Chris. Thank you. I'm doing great. Feeling good.
For people who may be listening who are not completely familiar with Architects and Engineers for 9/11, can you give a brief background on what's going on there, what you guys are doing over there?
Well, sure. I started 12 years ago when I heard on the radio from in the San Francisco Bay Area, KPFA, Bonnie Faulkner's Guns and Butter. She was interviewing on that program, David Ray Griffin, now an author of 12 books on the subject of 9/11 and what really happened at the World Trade Center. And this was in 2006. I was shocked, that to hear all this evidence that I had not heard on the mainstream media or from our government or from the American Institute of Architects. I didn't even know, for instance, there was a third tower that came down on 9/11. This was absolutely shocking. And when I finally saw it on the video later that evening, I'm going, of course, that's a controlled demolition. Everybody would know this. But guess what? The American Institute of Architects, which has 80,000 architects, of which I'm a member, has never issued one bulletin on the third worst structural failure in modern history. So we'll talk about that, this 47-story skyscraper that drops symmetrically, uniformly into its own footprint in under 7 seconds after witnesses hear explosions. So I dedicated myself to finding out what really happened on 9/11 to these 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers. And I developed a presentation, took it to the firm I was working for at the time in the Bay Area. And they all kind of thought I was nuts at first until they actually came in and saw the evidence. I'd bought them pizza. So they had to come in and get a free pizza and watch for 45 minutes. I had them by the tail, Chris. All 15 of them agreed with me. Oh my God, you're right. These are controlled demolitions. So we had 15 architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth at the time. Now we have 3,150 as of today. So we're marching forward, and we have hired the University of Alaska, Professor Leroy Hulsey, one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country now. And after 3 years, he is issuing his draft report, and we're editing it. It's in our hands. It is awesome. He's concluded that this building, World Trade Center 7, could not have come down by fires as claimed by the official story, normal office fires, if you will. So he shows how it could have come down also, by the way. You'd simply remove all 80 columns at once. And how does that happen in reality? You have to use explosives to remove them, like in controlled demolitions. So we also now have taken this evidence along with the other evidence we've assembled in the 12 years and submitted it to the U.S. Attorney, Jeffrey Berman in Manhattan. And he's written back, said he will comply with the law, which requires him to impanel a special grand jury. This is very exciting. We've also sued the FBI regarding their lack of informing Congress of this evidence, which they were required to do, which they did not do in 2015. All of the evidence they've collected since the 9/11 Commission report was issued. So they've omitted this evidence, and we have them by the short hairs because we have submitted and have records of them responding to a submittal of our DVD, 9/11 Blueprint for Truth, which highlights all this evidence, and the nanothermite paper, which is rather famous in the 9/11 truth circles for having proven that there was chips of nanothermite found in all the World Trade Center dust by a small team of scientists led by Niels Harrit in Copenhagen. And this is just damning evidence. And no wonder the FBI did not want to bring that to the attention of Congress. So we've got a lot of things happening, and it's all going to culminate in September when we go to Washington, D.C. with Professor Halsey and present this report at an engineering university and make our press conference there.
So where is the nanothermite dust that they found in the ruins now? I mean, is it still there in some laboratory somewhere, in some police? I mean, is it confiscated, or did they just disappear it like they did all the rest of the evidence away to China?
There was 100,000 tons of this dust. It's incredible. Everything that wasn't steel turned to dust. It was quite amazing. 90,000 tons of concrete pulverized to a fine powder. All of this dust, these dust samples contained up to 10 tons in total of this nanothermite. Now, many people have these samples. Professor Harrit and Professor Jones and others and myself have been sent samples of this dust. There's been 7 samples analyzed and 4 samples included in the peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal in 2009. And this is extraordinary evidence that shows the thermite. Thermite is an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. These chips that have thermite in them are dual layered, red on one side, gray on the other. The red side is composed of these nano-sized particles of iron oxide and aluminum powder, the ingredients of thermite. When they're put in a heater, a differential scanning calorimeter, they ignite. When they ignite, they produce these same spheres, molten iron microspheres, that are found, by the way, by the U.S. Geological Survey in all of their toxicological studies. Yet they have no reference to where these spheres came from. They're so ubiquitous that they call it a signature component of the World Trade Center dust. It's not even World Trade Center dust unless it has these unknown origin of these previously molten iron microspheres with unknown origin. They don't have no idea where they came from.
Yeah, but that's a question. What is in the official explanation? Are these spheres, are they not mentioned at all?
That's correct. Well, excuse me. The iron microspheres are mentioned quite carefully and documented in the U.S. Geological Survey Particle Atlas, which was done, a year after 9/11. It's been documented also by an independent environmental consultant, R.J. Lee, and they actually make a conclusion about them that they were formed during the event, not before. In other words, not from the welders that are producing all of this slag during the construction of the Trade Center, not after, down in the pile where things are melting, but during. This is extremely important. Now, yes, the official story from the media and the government completely ignores this key evidence, as they do the key evidence of explosives, which are heard by witnesses before the towers came down, before Building 7 came down, but also immediately before the towers came down. There's almost a couple of hundred first responders declaring orally in the oral records within a month after 9/11. They're talking about sounds of explosions, hearing these explosions before the towers came down, seeing these explosions, being in the building when these explosions are going off, and then outside, like a train running under their feet. Many of them described it before the towers came down. Of course, all of this is documented in our DVD. 9/11 explosive evidence experts speak out. People can look at that 1 hour version free on YouTube. And of course, we have the hour and a half version, which goes into much more detail and includes the psychologists' analysis of why this issue is so difficult for Americans to come to grips with the truth about 9/11.
The Could you elaborate a little bit on the situation with the elevators? Because the question comes up: how could they have uh, set up those explosives? Something to do with the elevator repair maintenance. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. We have the 9 months prior to 9/11. We have the largest elevator modernization in the world going on. This is documented in the magazine Elevator World in, I think it's March of 2001, before 9/11. And we had 85 employees of Ace Elevator who had this contract, who, by the way, came out of nowhere to get this contract, surpassing Otis Elevator, who installed the elevators in the first place. They were the obvious choice for this. Anyway, these 85 employees fled when the planes hit the towers. These are experts in the elevator cabs, the rescue system that the first responders use. They normally will stick around and go to a skyscraper anytime that there's an event like this, or any lesser event. But this is quite a scandal documented in USA Today. So it's possible that this company could have been a front to bring forth this devastation, because the elevators were shut down in turn with armed guards at each of them. And they this is the area that had immediate access to the core columns, these elevator shafts, because they were grouped around within the core column structure in the World Trade Center.
What do we know about Ace, this company? They came out of nowhere. Has anyone investigated them, like as to how they suddenly got the contract under mysterious circumstances? Have these kind of questions been raised?
Yeah, different people have been looking into this. The evidence is not yet as solid as we'd like before bringing it out in our presentations. Is going after this quite carefully, and he's assembled some very interesting data, which implicates some very interesting people. So I'm not going to be talking too much about that myself, but I'm looking forward to seeing that report when it's finished.
So if architects and engineers, ideally everything goes perfectly for you guys, step by step, how does it play out in the future? What would you like to see happen in September and on after that?
Yes, the evidence we're bringing forth, which, by the way, we've only touched on today. I mean, it goes on, and let me just highlight some of it. We have squibs, or isolated explosive ejections, ejecting out of the Twin Towers 20, 40, 60 stories below what we're told is a gravitational collapse due to fires from the jet plane impacts. Weakening the steel, according to the official story. But then there's all these massive quantities of ejections, dozens and dozens of them, that are obviously done by explosives when you just look really carefully at it. You can also look at the behavior of the North Tower, which we're told drove the rest of the building down to the ground and then destroyed itself. Which is ludicrous, because this is the lightest, weakest part of the building, the very top. It can't destroy the cold, hard, intact steel below. These are virtual pyramids, if you will. They get stronger and stronger necessarily as you go down to the ground, to where at the bottom they're solid steel. So this is the official story, which relies on a paper put forth by Zdenek Bazant from Chicago Northwestern University. He submitted this 4-page paper just 2 days after 9/11, whenever the whole world is in shock, trying to, weigh the implications and what's really happening in front of our faces. This guy has put together the theoretical basis for the gravitational collapse of this building due to fire that NIST uses today as its sole reason that the building came down. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which has been tasked by Congress early on to explain these collapses. And in the case of Building 7, they took 7 years to come up with this theory of theirs that the building came down by normal office fire. And yet it too has all the signs of explosive controlled demolition, not to mention the witnesses, none of which, by the way, appear in any of the official reports for either Building 7 or Building 1 and Building 2. So no, instead, what you have is witnesses hearing explosions, and then the top part of the North Tower, it doesn't drive the rest of the building down. That's not what we see. It's destroyed itself in the first 4 seconds with these telescopes in on itself with these ejecting squibs. And then what happens after that is more flames and ejections, and we begin to then see the building tearing itself apart, hurling 4 and 8 ton structural steel sections in every direction out of the tower laterally at 60 to 80 miles an hour, laterally, landing into buildings surrounding it, and landing up to 600 feet in every direction. These are freely flying structural steel sections. Steel and gravity works down. These steel sections should have been falling, not peppering the entire outside the boundaries of the World Trade Center. So this is absolutely extraordinary what's going on here. And that evidence, of course, is ignored by NIST and others as well. So all of this evidence has been given to the U.S. attorney to give to the federal grand jury. It's been given to the FBI before, and now this lawsuit requires them to comply and give it to Congress, which means give it publicly to the American people, in essence, and which is great. So we're looking forward to quite an exposure, along with the Halsey study, which turns the tables on the official reports completely, because this is the report that was supposed to have been done by NIST, but which they failed miserably in their computer reports, and they completely have denied releasing these input data to their computer reports, citing that they might jeopardize public safety if they were to release this information to the architects and engineers who are tasked with ensuring the public safety. So we've got lots of problems there, and so we expect this tour of engineering universities that Professor Halsey and other members of our team are going to be about in September. We expect that to open this whole thing up in the eyes of the American Society of Civil Engineers, which, along with the American Institute of Architects, has suppressed this information quite a bit. And I mean, you get a few people at the top, and they can be controlled, and that controls the whole thing. That's how the 9/11 cover-up began, with the media, the government, the judicial system.
Is there
so
an
far.
exact date in September or that we know about? I mean, this is really exciting news.
Yeah, it is. We will be highlighting the area around September 11th and we're trying to book these venues now. So stay tuned. Probably on September 11th itself, we'll have a couple of these events.
Yeah, according to Wikipedia, on talking about Building 7, it was quote unquote debris and the resulting fires, and then it was a chain reaction of all those columns that brought down Building 7.
Yes.
This is what's out there, which kind of leads to my next question. what's the most effective tool that you found in your experience on educating people about this? What can be done to further awaken people to the discrepancies between the reality and the official story?
Well, the DVD that we produced in 2013, 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. You can just search on YouTube, Experts Speak Out. It comes right up. This is one of the best comprehensive materials. Our weekly webinars that we do every month, we have a series of 3 weekly webinars. First one's on Building 7, the first Thursday of the month at 1 p.m. Just tune into our YouTube channel or subscribe. It's ae911truth.org. Excuse me, ae911truth is the name of our YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. You'll get notifications of our weekly webinars. They're live streamed on YouTube. And that's the latest material. And probably the best. But there's many of those archived on YouTube, along with our main documentary on the subject. We have a booklet that's 50 pages called Beyond Misinformation. You can get that for free on our website by subscribing to our email. So that'll also put you on our email list. Just go to ae911truth.org. Oh, I forgot the first part of your question. I was going to answer that too.
Oh, about what can be done to educate the people. Yeah.
Yeah, so informing ourselves is the first step through those means. And then sharing that information. We have an online store at ae911truth.org where you can buy DVDs very inexpensively and brochures. We have a 4-page half-size brochure that has all this evidence listed on it, and you can hand them out, do tabling events at your local flea markets and so forth. There's a million people around the world who have done this already. It's ongoing. This is a grassroots movement, really. One-on-one. People are woken up by hearing this a second, a third, a fourth time. So that's why we relish the opportunity to speak on podcasts like yours, Chris, because many more people are brought to this material, and now you have to wrestle with it. What do I do? How do I process this? What does this mean? Well, the fact that the Twin Towers and Building 7 were blown up in controlled demolitions has severe global implications, ramifications. We now have to rethink everything we thought over the last 18 years here. We've invaded 2 countries because of 9/11, particularly because of the destruction of these 3 buildings on 9/11. At least 2 of them are main reasons that people supported the Bush administration in going to war and invading 2 countries in which over 2 million people have been killed. 7,000 U.S. soldiers also, and a couple of thousand of them are taking their lives. 22 a day, I think. What, Chris?
Well, and not to mention the Patriot Act, which was conveniently ready to go, and they passed it right after. It obviously had been written before 9/11. That was their golden ticket to get that through.
Yes, and this has taken away our civil liberties, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, liberties that we take for granted. Any of us now can be arrested without a charge for merely being associated with terrorism, and that's not even defined. The use of force is how it's defined, and that's not defined either. We can be held indefinitely without a right to a lawyer, a trial, a jury. We can be tortured even and assassinated, American citizens, without due process. This is the way things are today, legally, in this country. So it's got to be reversed. And the only way to reverse it is to pull the carpet out from 9/11 the rug under the false structure that we've been provided, the story that changed the world, literally. So let's all wake up and realize that this is not the same world that we grew up in as children. Our children are growing up in a very different world, and it's going to only take another false flag operation, such as 9/11, such as the sinking of the U.S. Liberty, such as the affair in Vietnam.
Yeah,
What was the name of that? Gulf of Tonkin affair.
Tonkin.
Um, yeah,
And it goes
and
back to the USS Maine,
uh-huh.
because the war with Spain, that was proved to be a false flag as well.
And the sinking of the Lusitania
Yep.
was set up as a provocation, as was the provocation of Japan to start World War II, where we knew they had broken the codes. Robert Stinnett, in his book, has proven that the Americans knew that they were heading toward Hawaii to attack Pearl Harbor, and they moved the best ships out of there and left the others to take the heat as a means of manipulating the emotions of the American people to finally go to war, which was a big deal by those in power at the time, world power.
What mainstream media outlets has architects and engineers received, and why don't you think they're getting? Why are you not getting more mainstream coverage of these events as they happen?
Well, I think that the powers that be have placed themselves in strategic locations in the media, in government, among our elected representatives, who are not telling the American people the truth, because they seem to have a vested interest in continuing the lie that we are all living under today. We're more hopeful that President Trump will eventually increase more and more, reveal more and more truth, but we're all divided on whether that's going to happen or not.
I wouldn't bet on it.
Right. Me neither. Me either. And so what do we do? All we can do is scream from the rooftops. And that's what we've been doing with AE 9/11 Truth for 12 years in all of the means and methods that we've been talking about here. And the reason I talk to audiences like yours is so they will continue to share this information so that people can wake up and realize that they've been hoodwinked, scammed. This is the biggest scam. It's the crime of the century. It's absolute treason and mass murder. These people have to be exposed and justice dealt with. And only the truth about 9/11 will bring justice to the lives of those lost on 9/11, and justice to the remaining family members who are grieving for them under a false awareness of what really happened to their loved ones.
So how can people get involved? Sign the petition, sign up for the website. What else? What are there's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of things people can do to make this push forward. How can people get involved, Richard?
Yes, there's 22,000 others in addition to the more than 3,000 architects and engineers who have signed our petition. So please go to our website, sign that petition yourself, make take a public stance, declare that you demand a new investigation. And the petition states that Congress, it demands that of Congress. Well, this is, the Constitution that we live under today. We want to use it to its maximum potential. Whether Congress is completely or almost completely corrupt or not is relevant, but it doesn't preclude us from petitioning them, because that's excuse me, that's the vehicle that we have to 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 work with in Congress. We also have an act, and we want you to take this draft legislation, the Bobby McIlvaine Act for the reinvestigation of the World Trade Center, to your member of Congress. Demand that they stand up for the truth about 9/11. Put them on notice. Let them know that they will be outvoted if they don't stand up for truth. That's why you put them in the position they're in representing you. So this draft legislation is modeled after the Benghazi Act, and it calls for a new investigation uh, with uh, with subpoena power to bring forth witnesses, with offers of immunity, powers like that to bring forth witnesses that may be guilty, and so that we can get to the bottom of what really happened here. So yes, take that. That's something else you can do. Take that legislation, which is on our website at ae911truth.org. One of the main slides there is labeled justice, and that's one way. That's the legislative way. There's the judicial way we've talked about earlier with the uh, with the
Attorney General.
yes, the federal grand jury investigation and the FBI lawsuit, which you can't do much about as a citizen. But when the Halsey study comes out, we want you to take that to every architect and engineer that you can find, and particularly in the universities as academic professionals there,
This is
because
very,
this will turn them upside down.
yeah, this is very exciting. Richard, are there any final thoughts before we wrap up? Any further plugins that you want to talk about?
That about covers it, Chris. I'm hoping people will do one of those things that take one of these actions that we're so encouraging, and be sure to sign up for our email newsletter so you know what's going on in the 9/11 Truth movement, particularly with ae911truth.org. Go to that website and sign up. Stay tuned with us. Join the family of those. Get the support of 3,150 architects and engineers. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of technical credibility. More than 30 years of expertise collectively. Excuse me. That's more than 30,000 years of collective expertise. Take that to your congressperson or to your family members or colleagues at home, and use us. I mean, you know, you don't have to be the fall guy. Blame it on us. Hey, look, what 3,000 architects are wanting a new investigation. Are they all conspiracy theorists?
This is, just coffee talk with my friends over the years. I often tell people, I say, there's a group of architects and engineers out there. They're not screaming conspiracy. They're just saying, look, the official story, that's not right. You know what I mean? And it's incredible. I'm really looking forward to September. Do you have any more, like, we just had the Red Pill Expo in Hartford. Do you have any upcoming events like that coming up?
Just as September 11th. So encouraging everybody to stay tuned and show up at those events.
Excellent, Richard. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're so welcome, Chris. Thanks. It's an honor.
Thanks.